The ship was burning when it fell from the sky. Park woke up in the wreckage with blood on his face and fire all around him. He could not feel his left arm. The emergency lights were flashing red, and somewhere behind him, he could hear the screams of his dying. He crawled out through a broken window. The alien sky above him was purple, and 3 moons hung low on the horizon. The air smelled like copper and flowers. It was beautiful, but knew he was in terrible danger. He was the captain of the diplomatic vessel called the Morning Star. They had been sent to make first contact with the Empire, one of the oldest and most powerful civilizations in the galaxy. But something had gone wrong. Their ship had been shot down before they could even send a greeting. Tried to stand, but his legs would not hold him. He fell back into the dirt. All around him, the burning pieces of his ship lit up the night like 100 small suns. Then he heard them coming. They moved through the darkness like shadows. They were tall, almost 3 meters high, with bodies like giant insects. Their skin was hard and shiny, colored deep blue and green. They had 4 arms each, and their faces had large compound eyes that reflected the firelight like mirrors. Wings folded against their backs, thin and beautiful like stained glass. Had seen pictures of them before, but nothing had prepared him for this moment. They were terrifying. They were magnificent. One of them grabbed him by the throat and lifted him off the ground like he weighed nothing. "Human," it said. The voice was cold and clicking. "You are prisoner now." Could not breathe. He could not speak. He just hung there in the alien's grip, watching his world end. They put chains on his wrists and ankles, heavy chains made of some dark metal that burned cold against his skin. Then they dragged him across miles of strange landscape. Saw forests with trees that glowed. He saw rivers that flowed upward into the sky. He saw creatures with too many eyes watching him from the shadows. By the time they reached the palace, the sun was rising. And what a palace it was! It rose from the ground like a mountain made of crystal. Every surface caught the light and threw it back in rainbows. Towers spiraled up toward the clouds, connected by bridges so thin they looked like spider silk. Thousands of flew between the towers, their wings making sounds like wind through leaves. Had never seen anything so beautiful. He had also never felt so small. They took him inside, through halls of polished stone and rooms filled with strange machines. Others stopped to stare at him. Some clicked their mandibles in what might have been laughter. Some turned away in disgust. To them he was nothing, less than nothing. Humans were considered one of the lowest species in the galaxy. Too young, too weak, too primitive, barely worth keeping as slaves. Finally, they brought him to the throne room. It was vast. The ceiling was so high that could not see it. The walls were covered in murals showing history, great battles, conquered worlds, and queens stretching back thousands of years. And at the far end of the room, on a throne made of living crystal, sat Queen Nara. She was the most terrifying being had ever seen. Queen Nara was larger than the other. Her wings were fully spread behind her, spanning at least 10 meters. They were covered in patterns that seemed to shift and move like living things. Her compound eyes were gold, and when they looked at, he felt like she could see inside his soul. "So," she said, her voice echoed through the chamber like thunder, "this is what a human looks like." The guards threw to the floor before her throne. He tried to get up, but a foot pressed down on his back, holding him in place. "Your ship was destroyed," the queen continued. "Your crew is dead. You are the only survivor. Tell me, little creature, why should I not kill you right now?" His mouth was dry. His whole body was shaking. But somewhere deep inside him, a small voice told him to speak, to not give up. "Because," he said, his voice cracking, "I came in peace. We all did. We just wanted to talk." The queen laughed. It was not a kind sound. "Talk? Humans want to talk. Your species has nothing we want. You have no technology worth taking. Your planet has no resources worth conquering. You are insects to us. No, even insects have more value." The court laughed with her. Hundreds of clicking, buzzing laughs filled the room. Closed his eyes. This was it. This was how he was going to die. Alone, on a strange world, surrounded by creatures who saw him as nothing more than dirt. But then something happened. A burst through the doors of the throne room. She was smaller than the others, clearly young, and her wings were trembling with fear. "My queen," she cried. "The royal hatchery, the fever has spread. The healers cannot stop it." The laughter died instantly. Queen Nara stood from her throne and for the first time saw something other than coldness in her eyes. He saw fear. "My egg," she whispered, "is my egg safe?" "For now, my queen, but the fever grows stronger, the healers say. They say it may not survive the night." The queen moved past like he did not exist. She flew toward the doors, followed by a crowd of worried attendants. In moments, the throne room was nearly empty, but remained on the floor forgotten, and he heard things. He heard the whispers of the guards left behind. "The fever comes every generation," one said. "It takes half the eggs each time." "The queen has only one egg," another replied. "If it dies, her line ends. The succession will tear the empire apart." His mind was racing. He knew about fevers. He knew about medicine. Human medicine might be primitive compared to technology, but perhaps that was exactly why it might work. "Wait," he shouted, "I can help." The guards looked at him like he was crazy. "I know medicine," said. "Human medicine. Maybe it is different enough to work. Please let me try." The guards laughed at first, but then one of them stopped. She looked at with something like curiosity. "The healers have tried everything," she said. "What could a human possibly do that they cannot?" Met her eyes. "Something different," he said. "Sometimes the answer is not more power, it is a different way of thinking." They took him to Queen Nara. She listened to his words with cold fury in her eyes. She called him a fool. She called him arrogant. She threatened to kill him a dozen different ways. But in the end, when all other options had failed, she let him enter the royal hatchery. And so began the longest 7 nights of Park's life. The egg was beautiful. It sat in the center of a room filled with warm lights and soft sounds. It was the size of a small car, colored in swirls of gold and blue, and it pulsed with a gentle inner light. But that light was fading. The fever was killing it. Worked without sleep. He used the basic medical supplies from his own uniform's emergency kit, simple antibiotics, fever reducers, and monitoring devices that they had never seen before. Human technology was not more advanced. It was just different. Night after night, he sat beside the egg. He talked to it. He sang to it, old Korean lullabies that his mother had sung to him when he was a child. He told the egg about Earth, about the ocean, about the way the sun looked when it set over the mountains of his homeland. And slowly, night by night, the fever began to break. On the 7th morning, the egg cracked open. The creature that emerged was tiny. It had soft wings and huge eyes that blinked in the light. It looked around the room, saw all the healers and guards, saw Queen Nara herself standing frozen in the doorway. And then it crawled toward him with its little legs. It made a small, chirping sound, and then it climbed into his arms and pressed its head against his chest. It had imprinted on him. The first face it saw, the first voice it knew. Park, the human prisoner, had become the first thing in the universe that the royal heir had ever loved. The room was silent. No one moved, no one breathed. Queen Nara stared at her child in the arms of a human, and the whole palace understood that nothing would ever be the same again. 3 cycles had passed since the egg hatched. A cycle was about the same as an Earth year, so Park had been living in the palace for 3 years now. He was no longer kept in chains. He was no longer treated like a prisoner, but he was also not free. They called him an attendant. It was a fancy word that meant he was allowed to live as long as he stayed useful, and had become very useful indeed. The young princess was named. She was growing fast, as children did. In 3 cycles, she had grown from a tiny creature the size of a cat to a child that came up to his chest. Her wings were getting stronger. Her compound eyes were turning from soft gray to the bright gold of her mother's. She was beautiful. And she refused to eat unless was in the room. This was a big problem. Every morning, servants would bring the finest foods to the princess's chambers, rare fruits from 100 worlds, perfectly prepared meats, sweet liquids that cost more than most people earned in a lifetime. Would look at all of it, then look at the door. "Where is?" she would ask. "The human is not allowed in the royal dining chamber, princess," the servants would say. "Then I am not eating," would reply. This happened every single day. The servants tried everything. They tried bribing her. They tried threatening her. They even tried hiding the food in games and puzzles. Nothing worked. In the end, Queen Nara had no choice. She gave permission to dine with the princess. The court was scandalized. A human eating at the same table as royal blood. It was unheard of. It was disgusting. It was against every tradition that they held sacred. But what could they do? The princess needed to eat, and the princess only ate with her human. Tried his best to stay invisible. He sat in the corner of the room, far from the main table. He ate simple food that the servants gave him with looks of disgust. He never spoke unless spoke to him first, but did not care about invisible. She would call out every morning, "Come sit next to me, tell me a story," and would look at the servants, at the guards, at all the powerful watching him with hatred in their eyes. Then he would stand up and walk to the princess's side, because what else could he do? He told her stories every day, stories from Earth, fairy tales about princes and dragons, about clever foxes and brave rabbits. He told her about the ocean, which could not imagine, all that water, just sitting there, not in the sky but on the ground. It sounded like magic. He taught her words in Korean, simple words at first, hello, goodbye, thank you, please. Then harder words, happy, sad, friend, family. Then the hardest word of all. "What does love mean?" asked one day. Was quiet for a long time. They were sitting in the palace gardens, surrounded by flowers that sang when the wind blew. The 3 moons were rising, painting everything in soft silver light. "Love," said slowly, "is when you care about someone more than yourself, when you want them to be happy, even if it makes you sad, when you would do anything to protect them." Thought about this, her little wings twitched. "Do you love me?" she asked. His heart hurt. This small creature, this alien child, had become the most important thing in his life. He had saved her when she was just an egg. He had watched her take her first steps. He had been there for her first words, her first flight, her first laugh. "Yes," he said, "I love you." Smiled. It was strange to see a smile. Their faces were not made for it. But somehow she had learned to do it. "I love you too," she said. "You are mine." Those were the good moments, but there were many bad moments too. General was the worst. Was the Queen's war commander, the greatest warrior in the empire. He had conquered 20 worlds. He had killed enemies beyond counting. His body was covered in scars, and each scar had a story of violence behind it. And he hated with every fiber of his being. "The human is corrupting the princess," said one day, standing before Queen Nara's throne. "She speaks more human words than, she laughs like a human, she even walks like a human. This is not proper for a royal heir." Queen Nara sat on her throne with her eyes half closed. She had been listening to these complaints for 3 cycles now. "The princess is healthy," she said. "She is growing strong. What else matters?" "Her mind is not strong," insisted. "Her heart is not. When she becomes queen, how will she rule? With human softness, with human weakness. Our enemies will destroy us." The court murmured in agreement. Many of them shared feelings. They saw playing with her human and they felt afraid. This was not how things were supposed to be. Heard about these conversations. He heard the whispers in the halls. He knew that his life hung by a thread, and that thread was getting thinner every day. But he could not leave. She needed him, and truth be told, he needed her too. One night the thread almost broke. Was sleeping in his small room near the princess's chambers when he heard a sound. It was quiet, just a soft click of a door opening, but something made him wake up. He opened his eyes and saw shadows moving in the darkness. There were 3 of them, assassins dressed in black with blades in their hands. They moved toward his bed without making a sound. Had 1 second to react. He rolled off the bed just as a blade came down where his head had been. He hit the floor hard and scrambled backward. The assassins followed, their movements fast and deadly. "The general sends his greetings," one of them whispered. Grabbed the only thing he could reach, a small lamp made of crystal. He threw it at the nearest assassin, then ran for the door. A blade caught his shoulder. Pain exploded through his body, but he kept running. He burst out into the hallway screaming for help, but the palace was quiet. The guards who should have been there were gone, had planned this carefully. The assassins followed him into the hall, backed against a wall, holding his bleeding shoulder. This was it. This was how he was going to die. And then a small voice cut through the darkness. "Leave him alone." Flew down from the ceiling, her small wings buzzing with fury. She landed between and the assassins, spreading her wings wide. "You will not hurt my," she screamed. The assassins hesitated. They had not expected this. They had orders to kill the human, but hurting the princess, that was a death sentence. "Move aside, princess," one of them said. "This does not concern you." "He is mine," said. Her voice was not the voice of a child anymore. It was the voice of a queen. "If you touch him, I will tell my mother, I will tell everyone, and you will die, all of you, and whoever sent you." The assassins looked at each other. Then slowly they stepped back. "This is not over," one of them said. "The human cannot be protected forever." And then they were gone, vanishing into the shadows like they had never been there. Fell to his knees. The wound on his shoulder was bleeding badly, but he did not care. He looked at this small creature who had just saved his life, and he felt tears running down his face. "Thank you," he whispered. Rushed to him, pressing her small hands against his wound. Her eyes were wet too, though were not supposed to cry. "You are my family," she said. "I will always protect you." The next morning the whole palace knew what had happened. The assassins were found and executed. General any involvement, but everyone knew the truth. He had tried to kill the human. He had failed. And in failing, he had made something very clear. Was no longer just an attendant. He was no longer just a curiosity. He was essential. The princess loved him. The princess had chosen him, and anyone who tried to change that would face the wrath of the future queen. The court did not like this. Generals certainly did not like this, but Queen Nara saw something that day that made her think. She saw her daughter fight for someone she loved. She saw her daughter show courage and loyalty. She saw her daughter become more than she had ever expected. And she began to wonder if perhaps the human had given her something that no ever could. Later that night, the queen visited in his room. Healers had treated his wound, but he was still weak. He tried to bow, but she stopped him with a wave of her hand. "You have changed my daughter," she said quietly. Did not know what to say. Was this a good thing or a bad thing? "She laughs now," the queen continued. "She asks questions. She cares about others. These are not traits. These are human traits." She paused, looking at him with those golden eyes. "I should hate you for this. Part of me does. You have made my daughter strange. You have made her different. She will never be a proper queen." Held his breath. But Queen Nara said slowly, "Perhaps she will be something better, something new." She turned to leave, then stopped at the door. "The general will try again," she said. "He will never stop trying. You should know this." "I know," said. Will you stay anyway for her? Thought about Earth. He thought about his home, his family, his old life. All of it felt so far away now, like a dream he had once had long ago. Then he thought about her smile, her laugh, her small hand reaching for his. Yes, he said, I will stay. The Queen nodded just once, then she was gone, and lay back on his bed, looking up at the alien ceiling, knowing that the hardest days were still ahead. The challenge came on a cold morning. Was eating breakfast with when the doors to the dining chamber burst open. General stood there, his massive form filling the doorway. Behind him, a crowd of nobles had gathered, their compound eyes glittering with excitement. Human, his voice echoed through the room like thunder. I challenge you to blood combat. His cup fell from her hands and shattered on the floor. She looked at with terror in her eyes. Felt his heart turn to ice. He had learned about blood combat during his years in the palace. It was an ancient tradition. Two warriors would fight in an arena. The fight would only end when one of them was dead. There was no surrender. There was no escape. What is the charge? Asked. His voice was steady, even though his hands were shaking under the table. Corruption of the royal heir, said with a cruel smile. Pollution of blood and culture. These are crimes worthy of death. The nobles behind him clicked their mandibles in agreement. Stood slowly. He knew he could not refuse. If he refused, he would be executed anyway, but as a coward. His death would mean nothing. Protection would mean nothing. Everything he had built would crumble. I accept, he said. No, screamed. She jumped up and grabbed his arm. You cannot, he will kill you, please. Knelt down and looked into her eyes. They were wet with tears. Listen to me, he said softly. I have to do this. If I run away, the general will never stop. Other people will think it is okay to hurt me. They will think you are weak for protecting me. I do not care what they think, cried. But I care about you, said. I want you to be strong. I want you to be respected. And sometimes being strong means facing things that scare you. Shook her head. Tears were running down her strange, beautiful face. You are just a human, she whispered. He is the greatest warrior in the empire. How can you win? Smiled, even though he was terrified. Humans have a secret, he said. We are very good at surviving, even when everything says we should not. The combat was set for 3 days later. 3 days to prepare. 3 days for the whole palace to whisper about his certain death. But did not waste those days. He had been watching combat for 3 cycles now. From his place in the shadows, he had studied their techniques, their movements, their fighting styles. He had seen warriors train in the palace courtyards. He had watched recordings of famous battles. And he had noticed something important. Were strong, they were fast, they were deadly, but they were also arrogant. They believed that power was everything. They attacked head-on, expecting to crush their enemies with pure force. They never expected someone to dodge. They never expected someone to think instead of fight. Went to the palace armory and asked for a weapon. The guards laughed at him, but they were required to give him something. He chose a simple blade, not too long, not too heavy. It felt strange in his hands. He had never been a fighter. But he did not need to be a fighter. He just needed to be different. On the 3rd day, the arena was full. Every noble in the palace had come to watch. They sat in the stone seats that rose high above the fighting floor. Queen Nara was there too, on a special throne overlooking everything. Her face showed no emotion. Was not allowed to come. She was too young, they said, but knew she was watching somehow. She always found a way. Walked into the arena wearing simple clothes. No armor. He was not allowed to have any. Just a thin shirt and pants and the small blade at his side. The crowd laughed. General entered from the opposite side. He was wearing full battle armor, polished until it shone like a mirror. In his 4 hands he carried 4 weapons, 2 long swords and 2 curved daggers. His wings spread behind him, massive and terrifying. He looked like death itself. "Look at the little human," said, and the arena echoed with cruel laughter. "He comes to fight with a butter knife." Said nothing. He just stood in the center of the arena, holding his blade in both hands, waiting. Circled him slowly, like a predator playing with food. "I want you to know something," the general said. "After I kill you, I will have the princess taken away from the palace. She will be sent to the distant colonies where she will learn to be a proper. She will forget you ever existed." Felt anger rise in his chest, but he pushed it down. Anger was what wanted. Anger made people stupid. "You talk too much," said quietly. His eyes narrowed, then he attacked. The general moved like lightning. His 4 blades came at from every direction. The crowd gasped. Surely the human would be cut to pieces in the first second. But was not there. He had stepped to the side at the last possible moment. The blades cut through empty air. The general's momentum carried him forward, and for just a moment he was off balance. Struck. His blade found a gap in the armor, right under his left arm. It was not a deep cut, but blood flowed. The arena went silent. Stumbled back, looking down at the wound with shock. He had been cut, by a human, in front of everyone. "Lucky," he growled. "That will not happen again." He attacked again, faster this time. His 4 arms moved in deadly patterns that no human could follow, but did not try to follow them. He just watched his body, his center, his weight. He had learned that every attack started from the same place. If you watched carefully, you could see it coming. Dodge, step, move. Danced around the arena like water flowing around rocks. Every time struck was somewhere else. Every time the general tried to corner him, slipped away. The crowd was not laughing anymore. Was getting tired. Were strong, but they were not built for long fights. Their bodies burned energy fast. After 10 minutes of constant attacking, the general was breathing hard. Was breathing hard too, but he was still standing. "Stand still and fight," roared. "Stop running like a coward." "Why?" asked. "Is that what you want me to do? Then I will not do it." He smiled, even though his whole body was screaming with exhaustion. Lost his temper completely. He threw aside 2 of his weapons and charged with all his remaining strength. It was a killing blow, meant to crush with pure power. But had been waiting for this moment. He dropped to the ground and rolled forward, under the general's attack. As momentum carried him past, struck upward with his blade. The cut went across the back of his legs, slicing through the tendons. The general fell. He crashed to the ground with a sound like thunder. His remaining weapons scattered across the arena floor. He tried to get up, but his legs would not work anymore. He could only lie there helpless. Stood over him, breathing hard. Blood was dripping from a dozen small cuts on his arms and chest, but he was alive, and was down. "Finish it," growled. "Kill me. That is how blood combat ends." Looked down at the general. This creature had tried to kill him, had sent assassins in the night, had threatened to take away. Every part of wanted to bring the blade down and end it. But he did not. Instead, dropped his weapon. He reached out his hand toward. "No," he said, "I am not going to kill you." The arena was completely silent. No one moved. No one breathed. "What are you doing?" whispered. "This is blood combat. There must be death." "I do not care about your traditions," said. "I am human. We do things differently." He kept his hand extended. "You lost, I won, but I do not want you dead. I just want you to leave me alone, leave alone, except that I am not your enemy." Stared at him with something that might have been confusion, or anger, or something else entirely. "You show me mercy," the general said slowly. "You spare my life." "Yes." "Why?" Thought about it. He thought about Earth. He thought about his mother, who had always told him to be kind even to people who hurt him. He thought about who had learned to love because he had taught her. "Because killing you would not make anything better," he said. "It would just create more hate, More pain. I have seen enough of that." For a long moment, nothing happened. Then slowly, General reached up and took his hand. The crowd erupted. Some were shouting in anger. Some were clicking with confusion. Some were completely silent, their minds trying to understand what they had just seen. On her throne, Queen Nara watched it all with unreadable eyes. Helped sit up. The general's legs were useless. He would need healers, maybe months of recovery, but he was alive. "I do not understand you," said quietly. "You had every right to kill me. I tried to murder you. I would have taken the princess. And you just let me live." "I told you," said, "humans are different." He turned and walked out of the arena, leaving the general sitting in the dust behind him. That night ran to him the moment he returned to his room. She threw herself into his arms, crying and laughing at the same time. "You won," she kept saying. "You won, you beat him, everyone is talking about it." Held her close, feeling her small body shake with emotion. "It was not about winning," he said. "It was about showing them something." "Showing them what?" Looked out the window at the purple sky and the 3 moons rising. "That there is another way," he said. "A way that does not need death and cruelty. A way that makes us stronger by being kind." Looked up at him with shining eyes. "Will they understand?" she asked. Smiled sadly. "Some of them," he said. "Maybe not all, but some is enough. Some is a start." And far away in the royal chambers, Queen Nara sat alone on her throne, thinking about what she had witnessed. A human had faced her greatest warrior and won. But more than that, he had shown mercy. He had offered peace instead of death. Perhaps, she thought, there was more to these creatures than she had believed. Perhaps the galaxy had underestimated them all. The Galactic Conclave came to on a day of perfect sunshine. Ships from 12 star systems filled the sky above the Crystal Palace. They came in all shapes and sizes, sleek silver vessels from the Trade Federation, massive war carriers from the Dominion, elegant organic ships from the Collective. The whole galaxy had gathered in one place. And they had come to decide the fate of humanity. Stood in a corner of the great hall, dressed in servant's clothes, trying to be invisible. He was not supposed to be there at all. Humans were the topic of discussion, not participants in it. But Queen Nara had given him special permission to watch. "You should know what happens to your people," she had said, "whether you can do anything about it or not." The great hall was the largest room had ever seen. The ceiling was made of transparent crystal, showing the alien ships hovering above like metal clouds. The floor was polished stone that reflected everything like a mirror. And filling the hall were the representatives of the 12 most powerful civilizations in the known galaxy. They were there, massive armored beings with faces like stone. They were there, tall, plant-like creatures with leaves for hair and bark for skin. There were there beings made of pure light, flickering and shifting like flames. And many more species that had no names for, each more strange and terrifying than the last. They all looked at Queen Nara as she rose from her throne. "We gather today to discuss the human question," she announced. Her voice filled the hall without echo. "There has been discovered. Their technology has been analyzed. Their threat level has been assessed." She paused, looking around at the gathered powers. "The question before us is simple. What do we do with them?" The ambassador spoke first. He was a mountain of metal and stone, with a voice like grinding rocks. "Enslavement," he said. "They are weak but numerous. They can serve as labor for our mining colonies." "Too expensive to transport," said a flickering with cold light. "I propose extermination. Remove the threat before it grows." Felt his blood run cold. They were talking about billions of lives, his family, his friends, everyone he had ever known. "They suggest a middle path," said the plant ambassador, his voice soft like wind through leaves. "Quarantine the system. Let them destroy themselves. They will be gone within a few generations." More voices joined the discussion. Some wanted war. Some wanted slavery. Some wanted to simply forget that humans existed and let nature take its course. Not a single voice spoke in humanity's defense. Stood in his corner, his hands clenched into fists. He wanted to scream. He wanted to run into the center of the room and beg for his people's lives. But what good would it do? He was nothing here, less than nothing. Queen Nara listened to all of them with her cold, golden eyes. She said nothing. She just listened. And then the doors of the great hall burst open. Jalali. The voice was high and clear, cutting through the deep rumbling of alien diplomats. Every eye in the room turned toward the door. Came running in. She was not supposed to be there. She was supposed to be in her chambers, watched by a dozen guards, but somehow, as always, she had found a way. She ran across the great hall, her small wings buzzing, her golden eyes locked on one person and one person only. The alien ambassadors stared in shock as the Princess of Raced passed them without a second glance. She reached and threw herself into his arms. "Dad," she cried out in perfect Korean, "I was so scared. They said they were going to hurt your people. I could not stay away." The hall was completely silent. Held close, his heart pounding, he could feel 1,000 eyes on him. He could feel the weight of history pressing down on this moment. He had never told to call him that. He had never asked for it, but somewhere along the way in her heart she had decided. He was her father. The ambassador was the first to speak, his stone face twisted in confusion. Did that creature just call the human father? "That is impossible," said a flickering wildly. "The heir of bonded to a human. This must be some trick." Queen Nara had not moved from her throne, but something had changed in her face. Something had shifted behind those golden eyes. Slowly she stood. Every ambassador fell silent. The Queen of was about to speak. In this room her word was law. She walked down from her throne step by step. The crowd parted before her like water. She walked past all the powers of the galaxy. And she stopped beside and, for a long moment, she just looked at them, at her daughter clinging to a human, at holding her child like she was the most precious thing in the universe. "I will tell you a story," Queen Nara said. Her voice was soft, but it filled the entire hall. 5 cycles ago, a human ship crashed on my world. I ordered the survivors killed, all except one. He was weak. He was small. He was everything my people despise. She reached out and touched his hair. But when a fever threatened my only child, he stayed awake for 7 nights to save her. When assassins came for him, my daughter risked her life to protect him. When my greatest warrior challenged him to mortal combat, he won, and then showed mercy. The ambassadors shifted uneasily. This was not what they had expected. "I have ruled for 200 cycles," Queen Nara continued. "I have conquered worlds. I have destroyed enemies beyond counting. I know strength when I see it." She looked at directly. "This human is stronger than any of us." The hall erupted in protest. The roared. The flickered angrily. A dozen alien voices shouted that this was madness, that humans were nothing, that the queen had lost her mind. But Queen Nara raised one hand, and they all fell silent. "Not strength of body," she said. "Not strength of weapons. He has a different kind of strength. The strength to care for something that is not his own. The strength to spare an enemy. The strength to love without asking for anything in return." She turned to face the gathered powers. "For 10,000 cycles we have built our empire on conquest, on fear, on the belief that only the strong deserve to survive. And what has it brought us? Endless war, endless death, an empire that fears its own shadow." Her wings spread behind her, massive and magnificent. "Perhaps it is time to try something different." She looked down at, who was still holding onto like she would never let go. "My daughter has learned things from this human that I could never teach her. Kindness, compassion, hope. These are not weaknesses, they are the things that make life worth living. She raised her voice so that every corner of the Great Hall could hear. I propose that humanity be granted protectorate status. They will not be enslaved. They will not be exterminated. They will be protected by and allowed to grow in peace. The ambassador laughed. And why would we agree to this? What does humanity offer? They offer a future, Queen Nara said. They offer a different way of thinking. Look at my daughter. Look at what she has become. Would any of you have children like her? The ambassadors looked at this small creature who had run through a room full of the most powerful beings in the galaxy just to hold her human father. I stand with the humans, Queen Nara said. Stands with the humans. If any of you want to destroy them, you will have to go through us first. The silence stretched on forever. Then slowly, the ambassador stepped forward. The collective believes in growth, he said softly. In new possibilities, we support the Queen's proposal. Another voice rose. The Merchant Guild has traded with humans in secret. They are honorable. We support the proposal. One by one, other voices joined. Not all of them, not even most of them, but enough to tip the balance. The ambassador glared at Queen Nara with fury in his stone eyes. This is not over, he growled. No, the Queen agreed. It is just beginning. When the vote was taken, humanity won by a single margin. The news spread across the galaxy like wildfire. For the first time in 10,000 cycles, a new species had been granted full protection. The humans would live, they would grow, they would have a chance. And it had all started with a little princess running through a room full of aliens, shouting "Dad!" at a man who had no power, no weapons, no strength except the love in his heart. That night after the ambassadors had left and the palace was quiet, sat in the garden with and Queen Nara. The 3 moons hung low in the sky, painting everything in silver light. You took a big risk today, said to the Queen. The other powers could have turned against you. Yes, Nara agreed, they could have. Why did you do it? The Queen was quiet for a long time. Then she looked at who was sleeping with her head in his lap. Because she taught me something, Nara said. Something I had forgotten a long time ago. What? The Queen smiled. It was strange to see a smile, but somehow it looked right on her. That the strongest thing in the universe is not power, she said. It is love. She stood and spread her wings. Take care of my daughter, Park. You have earned the right to call yourself her father. And then she was gone, flying up toward the moons, leaving alone with the sleeping child in his arms. He looked up at the alien sky, at the 3 moons and the strange stars, and he thought about home, about Earth, about all the people who would never know that they had been saved by a little girl's love. Thank you, he whispered. Thank you for choosing me. Stirred in her sleep and smiled. 20 cycles had passed since the Galactic Conclave. Park stood on the balcony of the Crystal Palace, looking out at a world that had changed beyond recognition. His hair was gray now. His face was lined with age, but his eyes were still the same, warm and kind, full of quiet strength. Below him, the city had transformed. Where once there had been only, now there were humans walking the streets, scientists working in shared laboratories, artists creating together, children playing games that mixed alien and human traditions. It had not been easy. The first years after the conclave were filled with challenges. Many still hated humans. Many humans were terrified of their new alien protectors. There were fights. There were misunderstandings. There were moments when everything seemed like it might fall apart. But slowly, day by day, things got better. Had become the first human ambassador too. He spent his days building bridges between the 2 species. He helped human refugees find homes. He translated not just languages but cultures. He taught about human art and music. He taught humans about history and traditions. And through it all was by his side. She had grown into something remarkable, tall and graceful, with wings that shimmered like rainbows and eyes that glowed with inner light. She had her mother's strength and her father's kindness. She moved between worlds like she belonged to both, because in a way she did. "You are thinking too hard," a voice said behind him. Turned to see General approaching. The old warrior walked with a limp now. His legs had never fully healed from their battle all those cycles ago. But he no longer wore armor. He wore simple clothes, and his face held something that might have been peace. "Just remembering," said. Stood beside him on the balcony. "I used to hate you," the general said quietly, "more than I had ever hated anything. You were everything I thought was wrong with the universe. Weak, soft, full of feelings instead of strength." He looked down at the mixed crowds below. "I was wrong." Smiled. "It took you long enough to admit it." 20 cycles, agreed. "I am a slow learner." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment. These two beings who had once tried to kill each other had become something like friends. Not close friends. Their history was too complicated for that. But they respected each other. They understood each other. "Today is the day," said. "I know. Are you ready?" Took a deep breath. "I have been ready for a long time." Queen Nara had died 3 cycles ago. It was peaceful in the end. She had ruled for over 200 cycles, longer than any queen before her. She had changed the galaxy. She had protected humanity, and she had loved her daughter more than anything. At her funeral had spoken. She had talked about her mother's strength, her wisdom, her courage. And then she had talked about her human father and what he had taught her. "My mother gave me life," had said, "but taught me how to live." Today would become the new queen of. The coronation ceremony was held in the Great Hall, the same hall where the Galactic Conclave had been held 20 cycles ago. But it looked different now. Human flags hung beside banners. Human guests sat among alien dignitaries. Was given a place of honor in the front row. He watched as walked to the throne, her wings spread wide, her head held high. She was not the same little creature who had hatched in his arms so long ago. She was a queen, a leader, a symbol of everything 2 species could become when they chose love over fear. But when she looked at, her eyes were still the same, still full of trust, still full of love. The crown was placed on her head. The hall erupted in cheers and clicking, and 100 different sounds of celebration. Queen raised her hands for silence. "I stand before you today as the queen of," she said. "But I am not just, I am human too, not by blood but by choice, by the lessons I learned, by the love I was given." She looked at. 20 cycles ago, a human crashed on our world. He was weak and alone and afraid. My mother wanted to kill him. The court wanted to kill him. The whole galaxy thought he was worthless. Her voice echoed through the silent hall. But that human did something none of us expected. He loved without asking for anything in return. He showed mercy to his enemies. He taught kindness to those who had forgotten it. She spread her wings. "Today, I announce my first decree as queen. From this moment forward, borders are open to all human refugees. Any human who needs a home will find one here. Any human who needs protection will have it." The hall buzzed with reaction. Some cheered, some murmured with uncertainty, but no one objected. "And there is one more thing," said. She walked down from her throne. She walked past the dignitaries and ambassadors. She walked until she stood before. "Parks," she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "You saved my life when I was just an egg. You raised me when no one else would. You taught me to be kind. You taught me to be brave. You taught me to love." Her voice cracked slightly. "You are the only father I have ever known, and today I want the whole galaxy to know it." She held out her hand. "Will you stand beside me, not as a servant, not as an ambassador, but as my father, as a member of the royal family?" His eyes were wet. He had spent 20 cycles being careful, being humble, never asking for recognition. He had only wanted to help, to protect, to love. And now, here was his daughter, in front of everyone, asking him to be what he had always been in his heart. He took her hand and stood. The hall exploded, not with confusion or anger but with something else, something that sounded almost like joy. Historians would later call it the Day of Two Worlds, the day when a human officially became part of an alien royal family, the day when the galaxy saw that species did not matter, that blood did not matter, only love mattered. That night, after the celebrations had ended and the palace was quiet, sat in the garden one last time. He was old now, his body was tired, he knew he did not have many cycles left, but he felt no sadness, only peace. Came and sat beside him, just like she had done when she was small. "What are you thinking about?" she asked. Looked up at the three moons. "I was thinking about what your mother said to me once. She asked me why I stayed, why I did not try to escape and go back to Earth." "What did you tell her?" Smiled. "I told her I stayed for you." Leaned her head against his shoulder. "And now? Now I know I stayed for everyone, for you, for your mother, for my people, for," he sighed softly, "I came here as a prisoner, I stayed as a father, and somehow that changed everything." Was quiet for a moment. "The historians keep asking me," she said. "They want to write about you. They want to know how one human changed the galaxy. What should I tell them?" Thought about it. He thought about all the battles he had fought without weapons, all the walls he had broken down with kindness, all the hearts he had changed just by caring. "Tell them the truth," he said. "Tell them I was not special, I was not a hero, I was not the strongest or the bravest." He looked at with all the love in his heart. "Tell them I was just a father, I was just someone who loved his daughter, and sometimes that is enough to change the universe." Smiled, that strange, beautiful smile she had learned from him. "I love you, Dad," she said. "I love you too." And they sat there together, under the alien moons, as the night wrapped around them like a blanket. Far across the galaxy, on a small blue planet called Earth, mothers were telling their children stories. Stories about a man who went to the stars, who was captured by aliens, who saved a princess and won a war without fighting. They called him the father of two worlds. They called him the bridge builder. They called him the man who taught the universe to love. But to one person, to the most important person in all the stars, he was just Dad. And that was more than enough. The end.